Okay. So I'm just gonna voice over a recording because tried opening video editing software. I just don't feel like spending another 2 hours. We're figuring that out. So I'm just gonna go over a little bit of horse design in some games that did it well. Try to explain what I mean about making sure the shelving on your horse's faces are clear. To make sure that you understand the overall perspective and how light is going to hit that form and why it's important not to have super subtle horse faces. I'll go over why these different designs are successful. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So first off, Red Dead Redemption. This is from the newer one, I think, from the new demo that just came out like months and months ago. But the thing that's successful about this horse is, yeah, it's super realistic, but they exaggerated just the right things to give it that rough edge to match the players using the horse. So if you look at these eyes, a horse's eyes aren't necessarily that big. This little groove here isn't that deep in the horse's face, but they exaggerated this to give it kind of that snarling brow look to the horse. You know, that's kind of like what you imagine a cowboy's look to be. It's like always got that deep brow going on. Well, it's going on with the horses as well. In addition to that, they've given this horse super knotted muscle in here. Like, none of these forms especially read like not as much as the overall form, but there's enough texture there to give the sense that, you know, this horse is like scrawny and ripped at the same time. It's got that rough look to it, that rough, scrappy look. Down to its hooves, even. They even give these hooves, like, if you look at these, it's not perfectly... Let's see if I can zoom in here. It's not perfectly even, this hoof. It's got some rough edges to it. In addition to that, it's overgrown. It doesn't have any shoes. Like, everything about this horse reads as like a rough riding horse. It doesn't get a whole lot of care. You know what I mean? So, in that respect, it reflects the personality of its riders and the game itself while still adhering to realism. So it's like you gotta understand where to exaggerate the right things. And looking at this, the light hitting it, very obvious that there's this one shelf that's hitting it. It makes this really nice shadow along the side of its face. Now, Skyrim's horses are less realistic, still realistic-ish, but the thing about Skyrim, the kind of fantasy that they're trying to get across is like, you are the badass of Skyrim, right? So they're going to give you beefy horses. Everything about this horse is beef, all right? Its masseters here, its jaw muscles are so exaggerated, they actually extend past the point of its face. Like, this is a muscly horse. Alright, so everything about its anatomy is exaggerated to reflect that, because they want you to feel like a badass when you're riding this thing. Their animations aren't especially great, but from the angle that you're usually going to be seeing them, it's not necessarily important. What's important is that you see yourself riding this super beefy horse, and you're just like, yeah, I'm a badass. In addition to that, some little interesting animation quirk that I think you guys should take note of, especially because you're going to be designing things that are going to be animated. Notice how the eyes are they're like pushed far off to the side so they can look directly at you. Part of this is accentuated by the fact that this horse, when you're in game, will follow you with its head. If you walk around this horse is going to look at you straight on the whole time. So you want to like design with that in mind. Like, how is this animal going to interact with the player wherever they are? If the player is going to be looking at this horse and walking around it, wouldn't it be fun to design something that can look right back at them? And you'll notice this in a lot of the other the designs here, is that it's all about the eyes. The eyes, the eyes, the eyes. The eyebrow ridge, the eyeball, all the other stuff. But the most important thing I want you to get for your sculptures is like the overall bridge here. You know, actually housing the eyeball. Now going on to the latest Zelda game here. You notice with these horses, they're very clean, and there's just enough anatomy to give the sense that they're muscular, but still making them feel part of the world stylistically. Like, you know, they have this really clear eye going on. They don't have super exaggerated eyebrow ridges, but overall, their forms are very clean cut. You've got this plane here facing us, and you've got the bottom plane, and then you've got the top plane. So overall, very simple reads to these horses. They're not like exaggerated realism the way these guys are. These are more reflective of the game's art style, but they still feel like horses because they've got the core forms down of the creature. They don't need to show every single little vein or every subtle plane change for you to know that, hey, this is a horse. So, I would take some clues from this one as well. Now, this is Argo, I think it's Argo, from Shadow of the Colossus. This is an older game. They had their troubles with topology and stuff, but just a quick shout out that this horse is probably one of the more important characters in the game, maybe even more important than the protagonist. Again, this comes down to the animation of the horse. The horse in the game is very, like, he acts like a character. And part of that is reflected in these eyes. Look at these super exaggerated eyes of this horse. This is not a horse that you just throw away at a whim's notice. This is a character. So you want to make sure you're reflecting that. And part of the reason why it's so important that this horse in particular is a character, because it is literally the one horse that stays with the protagonist throughout the game. Like, it is the supporting character. It is the sidekick to the protagonist. So it is important that you give this horse a personality. And that part of that is understanding where your forms are and how to exaggerate them. Like, capturing every single subtle plane shift in a horse's face is not going to get you any closer to understanding what his personality is, how to exaggerate that character. So make sure that you guys are thinking about it, like, okay, why am I sculpting out these veins in the face if it's not to show some kind of personality quirk or what this horse belongs to? So keep that in mind. Moving on, I did some studies here. Didn't have time to go through do more ZBrush models, but here's some just really basic plane breakdowns of the horse when you're doing your studies, how you can think about this. I did a little bit different than last time because I think it would be easier for you guys to get. But just notice that the eyebrow ridge is important. It's important that you get this. It's not like just some kind of arbitrary thing that you can put there after you stick the eyeball on the side of its head. No, you need to sculpt it out. It's an important part of the horse's face. It is probably one of their only means of facial expression here. So make sure you're getting these eyebrow ridges. These will be up on the drive as well. Alright, let's go through my attempt at sculpting. I'm going to have to skip through a lot of this because a lot of the time what I do is I end up using my Photoshop hotkeys and ruin it, so bear with me here. It's been, I think this is my third time opening ZBrush. Like, I opened it 3 times this weekend in 4 years. So, yeah, give me some slack here. And I usually, let me just start with this. I start with a sphere when I'm starting to sculpt. I don't start with cubes. If I were sculpting in 3ds Max, I would start with a cube, but for ZBrush, it's just spheres. I prefer spheres. They're a little bit easier to manipulate, and I don't have to fight the edges that are already in here. Are put into the cubes and ZBrush cubes, so I much prefer spheres for this process. And here I'm just starting to move things where they need to be, just kind of creating a rough blob. Let me see if I can skip ahead to the snake hooks. So here I'm like trying to figure out like the actual like the orientation, like how do I get it centered? To center a ZBrush, all you need to do is press F. See that? There. I pressed the wrong button again. See? See this? Anyway. Move on. I need snake hook here. There we go, I found it. And then I just use snake hook to move the ears out. Generally what I do instead of doing snake hook, I'd actually prefer to insert subtools, but just for this, it's fine just to use snake hook. What's more important to me is that you're understanding the overall form of the horse. I'm not looking for super clean geometry or anything like that. I'm not really the person to give you tutorials on that. I'm more interested in, are you understanding the forms of the horse? Are you understanding in exaggerating the right forms over, you know, or is all your topology super clean or whatever? So after you do the snake hook, I do recommend that you do the reconstruct, or you use the whatever this button is. This is new from when I opened ZBrush 4 years ago, but it was super helpful to me a couple of times, and I was figuring stuff out. So if you go into, come on, do the thing. There we go. Move stroke over. Excuse me while I figure this out here. Oh no, this is the wrong place. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to use an insert tool for the subtool. I'm going to insert a subtool for the neck. Instead of pulling it out, I think it's a better option to just do insert a subtool and then sculpt over it. You can merge them if you want, but like, you know, obviously don't just stick a cylinder in there and call it a day. I want to see that you've actually sculpted out the neck here. So I'm going to go into import under the subtool category. Scroll down. There we go. Not append, you want insert. Doing all the wrong things. Anyways, I actually prefer insert because it's easier to blend things. I divide. You want to go into your geometry tab and divide it a bit, and then sort of manipulate it however you want. But yeah, I must have opened ZBrush like multiple times because I just kept clicking the wrong button because I'm so used to like using hotkeys in Photoshop. I don't even know when I use them, so a lot of the times I'd end up like doing something crazy and be like, what happened? Alright, so here, hold on, let me pause this. This is when I start using the clay buildup tool. Now, ZBrush's hotkeys have changed since I used it last. It's actually BCB is what you want to get for the clay buildup tool. You don't want to use BCL, so they changed that. So I'll go ahead and I'll write that up for you guys in one of the hotkey things. But BCB is the clay buildup tool, and that's what you want to use for your sculpting. Don't use the regular clay tool. Don't use the regular tool. I can't remember the name of it. It starts with a D. Dynamesh or something. Don't use that. Use clay buildup. Skip through me figuring out what all these buttons are. There we go. And so here, let me show you the how I did this. So here's where I click the reconstruct subdivisions, and this kind of fixes a lot of the weird stretching that you see going on before. Like this. So it kind of just cleans that up for you. It's not a cure-all fix, but for these it'll suffice. Yeah, if you ever find yourself with odd pinching in your model, you turn on the this tile here, show polyframe, and you can see where there's any like weird pinching going on, like what the polygons are doing in the model. And here's where I'm using the clay buildup tool. You notice how I'm using long strokes from top to bottom? That's how you should be sculpting. It's the same way with drawing. You don't want to be noodling bit by bit along the model. You want to go along the whole form. And you know, if you're sculpting out certain forms, like on the cheeks and stuff, sculpt out the whole cheek. Don't just noodle your way past it. Just get it all down immediately. I wish you could speed this up. I'm impatient. And I'm not using reference for this, by the way. I should have used reference. Oh well. It's done now. You know, I'm shifting my angle too so that I can sculpt out the form. Like, you want to be turning your model constantly while you're sculpting this. One, it lets you get a bunch of different angles to sculpt more efficiently. Two, so that you're constantly having to look at your model from multiple directions. So you're never stuck like, you know, this model looks great from this one angle, and then you go to look at it from another angle and it's completely off. So you want to make sure that you're constantly turning your model around. Yeah, the constant, the little brush pop-up coming up was for me hitting space. Because in Photoshop you use space to pan around the image. I kept trying to do that with ZBrush and yeah. It's been too long since I opened up this program. I ended up having to use the trial actually because the pirated version kept crashing on me. Like, I literally couldn't keep it open for more than 2 minutes before it would crash. So, yeah. Legit, here I go. Remember the hotkey for, you want to remember your hotkeys for the different brushes that you have. You can set different hotkeys, but I recommend you keep the standards. BCB, BMV, and BH are pretty good ones to keep because those are the 3 brushes that you'll be using a lot, at least for your initial sculpts. BCB is your clay buildup. BH is your high polish. And then your BMV is your move tool. And W is just regular scale move kind of thing. But yeah, when you're using ZBrush, when you're using any kind of digital program, one of the most important things is learning your hotkeys. Because it's like you don't realize how much time that you lose in your work process when you're constantly trying to figure out, okay, well, what button does this do again? Let me go move my arm all the way to the side of the screen so I can click the button that I need. No, just figure out what your hotkeys are and then memorize them so it becomes second nature to immediately have a tool at your fingertips. So if we skip ahead a bit, I think I moved the mouth out eventually. Yeah, because right now it's looking a little bit too stubby. Yeah, you notice how it's not super clean? I don't care if the brush strokes are showing. I really don't. What matters to me, more than anything, is are you getting the overall forms? You know, does this read as a cheekbone? Is there a clear top plane? That's the most important thing for me. Like, if you want to take a high polish to it, I don't mind, but it's not priority. What matters more to me is whether or not you're getting the general forms. And if I can see your brush strokes, I can see whether or not you're brushing stuff in properly. Let me skip ahead a little bit. Now the ears, I don't really need, I don't really care about whether or not you inset the ears. I do here just to show like an example of what you could do, but it's not as important to me as, say, like getting the overall form down. But I can see where I think I sculpted in this with too low polygons because there's like this nasty pinching here, but whatever. Next time. It's just been too long since I used ZBrush. Yeah, for me, it's like I'm not gonna get on your case if there's a little bit of pinching in the ears and stuff, but this is the most important part to me, the overall face. So if you look at it from this angle, I'm starting to get the top plane, the bottom plane, all this other stuff. Like the plane changes are reading. And when you're brushing stuff in, one thing you want to keep in mind is that you want to follow the flow of the form. You don't want to do cross-hatching with this. You want to imagine if you were dragging your finger across the face of this thing. What direction would it go? That's the way your brush strokes should go. And now part of the reason why I'm emphasizing that you get this really clear planal change in your models is something you need to understand about models in game. It doesn't matter how realistic the game is, all these forms are exaggerated. Because you gotta understand that the player is going to be seeing these character models from a distance. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. Certain things about the animal, about the character, whatever, need to read very clearly off the bat. And part of the way to get that to read is with the modeling underneath. Yeah, you can kind of salvage it with texturing and stuff like that, but without a good model, it's going to be very difficult. So you want to make sure the important things about a creature are reading immediately just from the model alone, without having to be like, oh, well, the texture artist will fix it later. Oh, well, the animator will fix it later. No, make sure your models are on point. Make sure that, you know, you're exaggerating the right things. I think this is when I do the neck. Alright, so for your necks, come on, sketch the neck. Just kind of cleaning it up there. Come on, show me the neck. You don't have to do this much noodling. For me, it was just kind of like, what do I do? Alright, show me the neck, please. Alright, there we go. Here's where I start sculpting the neck. Like I said, I don't want to see a bunch of cylinders for necks here. You're still going to have to do some form and some sculpting. Oops, that's when I forgot that I turned off symmetry. To toggle symmetry on and off, all you need to do is hit X. That'll give you symmetry across the X plane. But if you want to do symmetry across like top and bottom, I think it's Z, I believe, Y or Z. I think it's Y, actually. So just make sure that your symmetry is on the right axis when you start sculpting. Like, there's a lot of buttons you can hit accidentally that'll ruin everything. Trust me. Last weekend, I've probably found all of them. So just be aware of that. But yeah, just manipulating the shapes, making sure you're getting the overall idea here. Oops, wrong. And I think what I did wrong here is I gave it too much topology, so it should have gone down into a lower subdivision. Oh well. The more you know. And there's a tumor or something on its neck. I think that was me trying to figure out what was going on. So if we just skip ahead. And getting the major forms here down. And this is bulging a little bit, so I think I'm going to move this a little bit in. Yeah, you can see where it kind of bulges here. I need to move that in. Go to my move tool, or move brush, and just nudge that where it should be. Oh yeah, this is a little bit of pinching, you can see. There's other ways to fix it, so I'm just going to skip ahead the nonsense that I did here. You guys can laugh at me for this, because frankly I'm laughing at me right now. So look at this nonsense. If I'd actually worked on the right subdivision level, this wouldn't have happened, but oh well. Hindsight is 20/20. But yeah, I'm noodling more here, but frankly, this is about the level that I want from you. I don't need super high polished things. What I care about more is making sure that you guys get this eyebrow ridge here. You get the overall form, like the cheekbone, the jaw, this stuff. This is what's important to me. So if you guys can get that, you guys would be set. Let's see if there's anything else here. I wanted to show you guys a high polish, like what I did for the neck, just the base of the neck. I took a high polish to it and I just flattened it up. Oh yeah, this is me working with the Sculptris Pro. Just playing with it. You can play with it a little bit, but honestly for these head sculpts, they're so rough that you don't really need it. If you're doing like fine little details and stuff on the model, then you know you'd want to use Sculptris Pro because it's pretty nice, but just for these you don't need to. But yeah, that's about it. If you guys need more clarification, or if you guys want more idea of hotkeys and stuff, I can try to help, but your best bet is going to be Google for the hotkeys because I'm out of date. But if you guys need more clarification on certain sculpture things, like what I'm doing, just ask and I will try to answer. Keep in mind that it has been 4 years since I opened up this program. But you guys are going to be using this, you know, as a career, so you guys need to become more experts than I am, basically, which is why I'm pushing you guys to use this program for your studies, because you guys are 3D artists. You guys need to become so comfortable with 3D that, you know, you can do it without even thinking. Yeah, and this is where I use high polish to just flatten up the end of it here. Make sure you're not grabbing the edge of the model somewhere and pulling it. Make sure your brush size is just enough to flatten up the bottom. But yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna end it here. Let me know if you guys need any more help with anything. Otherwise, see you guys on Wednesday.